Hey folks, welcome to Spooky Appalachia. For today's video, I thought I'd give y'all something you'd really enjoy. Since y'all love these classic cryptid stories so much together in little story collections, I figure I'd make a pretty big collection. Anyways, I hope you enjoy it, and we'll get right into it. Alright, so the first one is the Grafton Monster. The town of Grafton is in the northern part of the state of West Virginia, about 35 minutes from Morgantown. Grafton was first settled in 1852 by construction crews of the Baltimore Railroad and Ohio Railroad. It was chartered in 1856, and during the Civil War, it was a key rail center that was occupied by both Confederate and Union troops. Grafton is also the home of the International Mother's Day Shrine. The holiday got its startings in Grafton. Also, it is the home to both West Virginia's national cemeteries. So, cool history on Grafton I wanted to throw in there. I hope you guys liked that part, but we'll get into the Grafton Monster part now. Our story takes place on June 16th, 1964, when a young reporter named Robert Cockrell was driving home from work around 11 o'clock p.m. He was the only car on the road of Riverside Drive, since most of the folks in town were in bed at this hour. As he was driving through a curve, he noticed something extremely odd and out of place. A huge white mass was standing between the road and the riverbank. While he drove past it, the thing never moved, but Robert could tell that it was alive. He described it as being about 9 feet tall and 4 feet wide, with white or gray in colored skin, and described it as being seal-like skin. And then the oddest thing about the creature was it had no head. Startled by this, Robert floored it home, and after calming down, he returned with 2 of his friends to investigate about an hour later. When they got there, the creature was gone without a trace, other than a giant impression left in the grass where it was standing. It was like the creature was lifted up from the spot it stood. The 3 also noticed an odd, low whistling sound coming from the river, but they could not find out exactly where it was coming from. After running the story in the paper, monster hunting fever took over the town. More than 100 people began covering the area at night, hoping to catch a glimpse of the creature. More than 20 people reported seeing it before the newspaper ran a story claiming that the creature was just someone pushing carts and was just misidentified as a wildly imaginative story.
Man, that is a good one.
Now, how in the world would they think that was somebody pushing carts, something looking
now,
like that? Now,
that's one thing, too, I was going to say.
At night, who's pushing carts like that on the side of the road at, 11 p.m.?
Right.
In a small town?
Yeah, but it's something as big as the Grafton Monster as described. How could you mistake somebody pushing a cart for something, that big with no head?
And a lot of y'all are from small towns. I'm from a small town.
Yep.
I currently live in a small town. You wouldn't see stuff like this at night, especially not back then.
No.
No.
But what's really neat about the Grafton Monster is, even though it's not one you hear about like every day, like, Mothman, Bigfoot, it's still one of those that's always lingering in the background.
Yeah.
There's always somebody with a story or an experience.
Well, I would definitely, if anybody knows of any Grafton Monster stories or experiences, just send those in. I could not find any to save my life. Originally, this was going to be about Grafton Monster, but it kind of
Took its own shape.
yeah, it did. The West Virginia cryptids made more sense, but we couldn't find any more Grafton Monster sighting stories. So if you've got any, send them to us. I'll feature them on here because that's what I do. I think Jared has another kind of obscure West Virginia cryptid next.
I really do. And what's really neat about this one is it's one of the ones I don't know, it's kind of like the underdog, it's the one you don't hear a lot about,
Mm-hmm.
but it's one that's really, really interesting.
Definitely.
And that's called the Vegetable Man or Veggie Man. One hot July day in 1968, a young man by the name of Jennings Frederick, who was around 19-year old at the time, had gone woodchuck hunting near his home in Fairmont, West Virginia. He hadn't had much luck and was about to head home when he heard a strange high-pitched sound like that of a sped-up recording. A voice reportedly said to him, "You need not fear me. I wish to communicate. I come as a friend. We know all of you. I come in peace. I wish for medical assistance. I need your help." He then saw a greenish skeletal stalk-like creature, about 6 to 7 feet tall, with slanted yellow eyes. It had human-like facial features and long vine-like arms that were no wider than a quarter. His fingers had suction cups on the end of them. Before he could move, he felt a vine wrap around him. Then what felt like a needle stuck into his arm. He could not get away. The creature had him in some type of trance-like paralysis state. All he could do is look at the creature with those eyes had turned from red to yaller as it sucked blood from Jennings' arm. Once the creature finished, then walked off out of sight, Jennings then heard an odd humming-like sound and thought it might be a craft taking off. Jennings recovered from his trance-like state and went home. He didn't tell his family of the event, and months later, he did tell the story to a UFO researcher from West Virginia named Gary Barker. Gary dubbed the creature Vegetable Man. I had heard this story a few times over the years and thought this was it, but I later found out while reading a post on Appalachian Oddity that there is actually more to this strange tale. Included are accounts of 2 more stories of this larger one from Appalachian Oddity. When Jennings was still in school, his mother reportedly witnessed a strange devil-like monster, which supposedly came from a flying saucer that landed in a field near the home. She was washing dishes one morning when she saw a small black or dark green creature from her kitchen window. The creature had pointed ears, a tail, no clothing, and was reportedly filling a bag with grass and dirt. Just beyond the humanoid figure was a 5-foot tall, 10-foot wide dome-shaped craft with an extended elevator. The creature appeared to be attached to a ship by a cable. The craft was silver and cream in coloration. Had a row of windows that rotated counterclockwise while producing a humming noise. Mrs. Frederick ran from the window, only to return a few minutes later and see the, quote, satanic-looking being take off in the saucer, which lifted slightly off the ground while humming slightly louder than before. Mrs. Frederick told her son when he returned from school, Jennings reportedly found depressions in the ground, clawed tracks, which convinced Jennings of his mother's claims. After his discharge from the Air Force, Jennings had a strange men in black encounter between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. Jennings was woke up by a red flashing of light. He grabbed his .38 revolver from under his pillow and investigated the living room, where he found a small gas canister. A hand grabbed him, put a needle in his left arm. Then he saw 3 men in black turtlenecks, slacks, and ski masks. One of them said, "The dogs have been darted and everyone gassed." They reportedly put a gas mask over Jennings, his face, and questioned him about the UFOs, what he thought they were, and what he thought of the future.
A lot of strangeness with that one. You know, I thought of this for the first time hearing you read it this time.
What's that?
Jennings' mother, that creature from the UFO she saw way before the Veggie Man, was getting dirt and grass in like a bag. Wonder what the possibility of it is that maybe that creature grew Veggie Man on his planet with our dirt and grass.
That's very possible. That could be why he said, I know all of you, and I need your help. Maybe he was trying to find a way to survive. How did things, grow here, nutrients and things like that. Very possible.
Ties it together.
Yeah,
I'd never thought of that before. Just
I hadn't either.
Theory that popped in my head while you're reading it. People might hate it, but hopefully people don't hate it.
Right. But no, that's a good one, man. I like that. That's interesting.
Yeah, thanks. It just popped in my head. Well, that's a great story. People tell me all the time they've never heard of Veggie Man. I forget where I heard about it the first time. It was probably just growing up. A lot of these are like Grafton Monster, Veggie Man, Flatwoods Monster. I heard about growing up.
I had never heard about a lot of these. Veggie Man was one of them I had never heard of. The Grafton Monster I'd never heard of. I'd heard, naturally Bigfoot and, of course, Mothman. I don't think anybody can be anywhere close to Appalachia and growing up and not hear of Mothman.
Had you heard of Flatwoods Monster? A lot of people told me they hadn't heard of that one.
I don't think so. I didn't hear about a lot of these until I started YouTube and started getting, talking to people into the, in the cryptid fields and things like that, and that's when, I started getting all these stories about, all these, wild cryptids and stuff, and experiences and everything. And that's when I learned a lot too of never say never and never say impossible. Always keep an open mind, because even back then there was things that people said was impossible that we even have proof of today, such as like, UFOs, things like that,
Yeah. Our government is saying, hey, UFOs are a thing. We don't know what they are, but they're
even though we
a
was
thing.
all right. Yeah, we already knew.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's wild. So
And speaking of UFOs, I've got a crazy UFO story coming up soon, so be on the lookout for that. Fan submitted
Yes.
crazy UFO story. Oh man, that was good.
So be sure to have those
Anyway,
notifications on.
yeah. Make sure you like, subscribe, and have the notification set. So our next one is actually a famous cryptid in Appalachia. It's everybody's favorite cryptid. It's the Blue Devil. No, I'm just kidding. It's Mothman.
Bum, bum, bum.
No, the Blue Devil's one I thought needs to be done, but it didn't make it into this one. Definitely will in the next West Virginia one if we do another West Virginia one. So there's a lot of debate over what the first Mothman sighting was. A whole lot.
Yeah, I've heard some heated discussions about that too.
Oh yeah, people get real heated about this.
Yeah.
Now, what I've heard, you know, I've got a lot of friends in Point Pleasant,
Right.
and a bunch of them have told me that thing has been around that area for a very long time, way before it got all over the news and everything.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've heard people say that even stories of sightings like that, that descriptions of it, that's like Mothman to a T, even goes back to like, the Ming Dynasty, ancient China, things like that.
Yeah, I think I've heard something like that. It's like cave paintings or something, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe. I could be wrong, but I've heard a lot. I've also want to point out that people in town have also told me, every time you hear this story, it says the sightings of the creature stopped after the Silver Bridge collapsed. Now, people in town have told me that's not the case. And if the stories I get in tell us anything, yeah, that matches up. Because I probably get 1 or 2 Mothman sightings sent to me a month.
Yeah.
So I think the first one in John Keel's book, was November 1st, 1966. 2 National Guardsmen at a armory near Camp Conley Road in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, spotted what they thought looked like a humanoid figure that was brown in colorization, perched on top of a log. And then, on November 15th, just a few days later, in 1966, 2 married couples were joyriding around in a black 1957 Chevy. They went to hang out at a spot in Point Pleasant. It was kind of a lover's lane type spot, the TNT area. One of the couples was Linda and Roger Scarberry. The other, Steve and Mary Malati. All 4 attended Point Pleasant High School at this time. They suddenly saw 2 circular, fiery red eyes next to the abandoned North Power Plant. They said the gray man-like creature was 6 to 7 feet tall, with folded wings behind its back. They quickly drove off on Route 62 after seeing this creature. The couples then saw the creature on a hill by a large billboard. It spread its wings out to about 10 feet in length and went straight up into the air and began gliding over the car. When they got to a straight stretch of road, they were going about 100 miles an hour, and the thing was able to keep up with and follow them. They were They were only able to get away from the creature when they reached the edge of Point Pleasant. The monster disappeared off into a field as they entered the town. After stopping at the local Dairyland to discuss what had happened, the teens decided to head back onto Route 62 to see if it was still there. They discovered a dead dog in the road and claimed the creature then jumped over the car and went through the woods on the opposite side of the road. They drove back into town and stopped at the local Tiny's Diner and contacted the police. Deputy Millard Halstead accompanied them back to the TNT area again, but there was no clear sign of the creature. The witnesses, however, claimed to see red eyes, shadows, and dust being kicked up nearby. They also reportedly heard a strange noise that sounded like a squeak or a record being sped up. The Malleys accompanied Linda and Roger back to the Scarberry home, where they stayed awake all night with fear. The next day, the sheriff held a press conference and the newspapers began being written about the story. By that night, the TNT area was full of cars and people were looking for the monster. While the locals called it the bird, the newspapers called the creature Mothman.
Man, that is so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And go ahead.
I was going to say, you can see why this is, people have been so into this for so long.
Yeah. And
over 100 people in town were said to have seen this thing too.
Right. So, that many people, one, maybe two, you could, maybe dismiss it possibly. But, when there's tons and tons of, accounts, eyewitnesses and stuff, that's kind of hard to dismiss.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, people are still reporting seeing that thing there around that TNT area to this day. I think I believe that I got one last Christmas. I think it was the last Christmas. 2022, where somebody ran up on it in a road in Point Pleasant near the TNT area.
Man.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely wild.
Definitely.
Well,
everybody's favorite cryptid too.
Oh yeah, is it the harbinger of sorrow, or does it, is it to warn people about events? That's another thing people are on the fence about.
We had a lady send a story a couple weeks ago, if you remember, who believed that she had a Mothman land up on her roof and was flapping around and screeching. And then she had a dream, I think it was that night, that the bridge that they were supposed to drive across that day in South Carolina, I think it was.
Over
to Georgia. There was some kind of traffic accident there. She had a dream about it and decided to go another route. And later heard on the news that there was an accident on that very bridge.
Yeah, so therefore, it maybe have warned her.
Yeah. So definitely an interesting one, for sure.
Absolutely, definitely. The next one we have up on the list is definitely another oldie but a goodie. That's the Flatwoods Monster. On September 12th, 1952, around 7 o'clock on Friday evening, a group of young boys consisting of Eugene Lemon, 17, Neil Nunley, 14, Eddie May, 13, Freddie May, 10, and Ronnie Shaver, also 10, were playing football on the lawn of Flatwoods Elementary School. Suddenly, the group saw what they described as a fireball fly quickly overhead and appear to land vertically on a nearby hilltop just past the Fisher farm. The boys were in disbelief. They weren't sure if what they had just seen was a flying saucer, a meteorite, an airplane crash. Did people need help? Should they report it? The boys run to Eddie and Freddie's grandparents' house. Their mother, Kathleen May, was there at the time. The boys explained the story to the relatives. Kathleen May joined the group of boys and headed out to the hilltop where the mysterious object had appeared to land. On the way up the steep hill, they noticed a pulsating or flashing light, accompanied by loud hissing and banging sounds. Once they got a bit closer, they noticed a terrible sulfuric smell. The group finally came up on the object they saw previously and found out right away it was not a meteorite. To their surprise, it was some type of craft. At this point, the group decided it might be best to get out of there. But before leaving, they noticed movement next to a nearby tree. They shined a flashlight toward the movement, and that's when they saw the creature. It was about 12 feet tall, with a round, blood-red face and bright, glowing eyes that illuminated the entire area. It also had a helmet or shroud over its head, described as being shaped like the ace of spades from a playing card deck. The rest of its body appeared to be made up of some type of green metallic material. It was terrifying, so they began to run. As they were trying to get away, it sprayed them with some kind of oil. The creature did not walk, but hovered after them. The group managed to escape unharmed, but each member felt sick for several days after the incident. And unsurprisingly, the media had a field day with this incident, and the group, now known as the Seven, became quite famous. They even traveled as far as New York City to appear on talk shows to discuss what they saw. Man, that too is a good one.
One of my favorites. There's a couple more sighting stories that I did not include in this. They're really good. There was also, James, one of our followers. James is from Flatwoods. His mother and uncle, I believe he said, saw the fireball in the sky, like on their back deck. I thought that was really cool.
Oh, man.
Yeah. But there was also another one that I don't see talked about a lot, like in the 80s or 90s, where somebody saw the thing again. It crashed or something, and somebody was driving by and saw it there.
Man, oh man.
So I thought that was really cool and worth mentioning.
Yeah, for sure, man. Wow.
Definitely one of my favorite cryptids. I don't live too far from Flatwoods, so that's probably why I like that one so much. Been to the museum a couple times and to Flatwoods a couple times.
You even saved it.
What's that?
You even saved it. I remember the video where you guys went to the...
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
We went to the chairs, yeah. We went to...
Really cool.
Yep. That was a cool video. That's another one I need to share out
really
again
fun
sometime.
adventure, too.
Yep. Definitely was. Let's see. I think we've got one more cryptid on the list.
Another good one, too.
Oh, and it's me. It's me reading this time.
There you go.
This is about the Oguya creature. Not a lot of people have heard about that either. You know, we've got a bunch. We got more obscure ones, I think, than we do the famous ones, which is good.
Yeah, for sure. You know.
Yeah. So, the Oguya is a freshwater cryptid that is said to look like a giant two-headed snapping turtle. And it weighs in at about 500 pounds, and it's 20 feet long. It roams West Virginia and Pennsylvania areas, mostly dwelling in the Ohio and Allegheny rivers. Though it is known as an aquatic cryptid, it is said to come onto land and feed on deer, cattle, and unsuspecting humans. There have been several sightings of the Oguya in Marion County, West Virginia. It is said that the first sighting of the creature was in 1745, where a witness reported a giant two-headed turtle coming out of the river and pulled a 12-year-old boy who was fishing on the bank into the river, and he was never seen again. Now, I also heard a story a couple years ago about some guys fishing. I forget where it was at, and they saw the thing. And it was real recent, just a couple of years ago. They were doing nighttime fishing in northern West Virginia, and they spotted it. They were using spotlight fishing, you know.
Yeah.
And they saw it come up out of a river.
Now that would be something to see, especially at night.
Yeah, it was on the news, man. I saw it on my local news.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's freaky.
Yeah. Now, you know, one time I was fishing in the New River, and I saw, it wasn't that big, but it was a giant snapping turtle swim right past me in the New. I was waiting, and it was pretty deep water, probably up to my waist, and I saw a giant snapping turtle swim by me.
Golly.
It was probably about as big as my torso. It was huge. It scared
man.
It scared me so bad when I saw that. I didn't know they got that big.
Yeah,
they
man.
Get huge.
Get huge, boy.
Yeah, so something like this, you know, really out of the question.
Yeah, you know, has merit to it, you know.
Yep. I feel bad for that 12-year-old boy who got eaten, just, you know, he's minding his own business fishing, got swallowed up.
Yeah, you imagine, you know, just trying to take in some fish and relax, you know, enjoy the day, evening, whatever, you know, and gone, burp.
Yep. Dang.
Man, oh man.
So this time we're doing Alabama.
Good old Alabama.
Yeah, you're closer to Alabama than I am.
Yep.
Oh, my wife's actually from Alabama.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. So, Alabama cryptids. I had a lot of fun looking into these. And then I had a new fan in front of the channel send in a couple stories that people had told him and one that happened to him. So, I thought that was really cool. Yeah, we're both pretty excited about this one. I think y'all will like it. Should I get into the first one?
Absolutely, man. Go ahead.
All right, the first one's about the Wolf Woman of Mobile, Alabama. Had you ever heard of this one? You're closer than me.
I started to say I have heard a few people talk about it, but I said down in Mobile, I said that's, you know, I said that's it's kind of like I said when I went down to Sherwood, I said I used to go down to Sherwood, Alabama, quite a bit, and a lot of folks down there, you know, if you're not if you're not kinfolk or something like that or something other, they usually don't say a whole lot. You know, they kind of keep a lot of stuff to themselves, you know, and everything. Kind of like, you know, so and it's a lot of it's, you know, because of, you know, like same way here in Tennessee or, you know, any other parts of the mountains, you know, a lot of it's because of ridicule.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah.
But like I said, I have heard about Wolf Woman a couple of times. Not as much
Well,
as the other ones, but I have heard.
okay. I will go ahead and read what I found out about it. Maybe you could tell us what you've heard about it after. How about that?
Let's do it.
All right. During April 1971, folks living in Mobile, Alabama and surrounding areas had sightings of a strange and bizarre cryptic creature. These short lived sightings spurred the legend of the Wolf Woman of Mobile. One of the first sightings, a man happened to be in his backyard doing some work and noticed what he described as a pretty woman and wolf. And she was covered in hair, but he said she was pretty attractive looking. And then another story was that a local teen had said that his dad had gone down to the nearby marshes and spotted it, and it chased him home. And after that, they began keeping their doors and windows locked at all times. Now, despite the over 50 reported sightings of this creature, no one has ever been harmed by it. People believed it was an escaped circus sideshow creature or even a feral woman. These days, folks believe that it was a skinwalker from the native tales.
Man, that's wild.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said,
Now,
now
what
what
do
I
you? Yeah, go ahead.
what I heard is I heard some fellas talking once, and like I said, when I was down there in Sherwood and stuff, like I said, we was just talking about strange things, the mountains and stuff like that. And one old fella said back when he was real young, he said like a lot of folks in the hills, they same as I was, just dirt poor, so said a lot of times just to pass the time off. Said in the evenings, when it got, kind of late and the sun started going down, where it weren't like deathly hot, they
Mm-hmm.
get out and just walk, everything, go for a walk, things like that.
We did that too.
Yeah. And said, yeah, I think it's just a mountain thing,
I guess I still do it.
I do too. But said they got out one evening and said that they was passing by this old house. He said they had passed it a million times, they grew up around it, So they passed it a million times. Said, but that evening, said it was just different, Said the whole vibe about the place, just mighty different. And said that, but they didn't pay much attention to it, said they kept on going. Well, so when they started coming back through, it was the same thing. And said one of them said he looked at his cousin and everything, told him, said, you gonna think I'm nuts here, said, but do you feel something kind of odd or different, strange, And he said, he said, I weren't gonna say nothing, but now that you mention it, yeah. Well, said that they kept kind of looking, said they actually half expected to see an old hang or something, So that's just kind of the vibe they got, just spooky,
Mm-hmm.
Well, said they kind of was hurrying by it. Well, when it did, said this woman comes running out of the back of it. Now, I said this old house, it was old, it was run down. Said nobody, weren't fit to live in or nothing. Well, said she comes running out of the back of it. And like she, said that she was just covered in hair, And it was just unreal. And said that they said they hollered, not like hollering at her, but just out of fright, Said they hollered and said she looked over at them, and then jerked her head back and kept on going.
Ooh.
They said the strange thing about it was they said she was so fast. Said it was like how like when you spook a deer, 4 or 5 hops and it's already across the field.
Yeah.
Well, they said this is how she was when she was running.
Huh.
But they said she was like, covered in hair and So even like her arm said that she was wearing like what looked like old like clothing like, and said one of the arms was tore off of it, and said you could see hair, just hanging down off her arms and stuff. And then when she was running, it was kind of like flailing behind her like
That's
almost
wild.
kind of like tassels off of a jacket or something.
Huh. That almost sounds like a werewolf.
And it's
Don't
very
you think?
possible. Very possible, man. Like I said, there's so many stories, comes out of these old mountains
Yeah.
that's so similar, and everything. One person might say, well, this is a dog man, and it may turn out to be a werewolf, or they may
Mhm.
say it's a werewolf, and it may turn out to be a dog man. You really don't ever know. But whatever it was, or whatever, I don't want to have no run-ins with it.
No. That's really cool that you knew that story too.
Yeah, and I, at one part said that the strange thing was that she was real pretty, which now that ain't really nothing uncommon. Cause I said, given my experiences from down there in Alabama, there's some mighty pretty gals down there.
Hey, my wife was born in Alabama. Lived there for a couple years.
And I said it's beautiful country too, man. Good folks, down home people.
And hopefully my wife heard that because I was implying that she was beautiful.
Yeah, if you hear this later,
She is.
now you know what you mean.
Yep. I'm not going to get. I don't think she can yell at me for that, right?
Well, let's hope not. Just don't make her mad. If
Yeah.
you make her mad, for some other reason, she'll find a way to, hold it against you.
She'll break the index finger on my other hand.
Yep.
And by the way, it's been doing better and better every single day. Thank everybody for all your thoughts and prayers.
Yeah,
It's-
definitely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, do you want to go into the Flatwoods Metal Man?
Yeah. Now, this one here is, I found.
This one's wild.
Yeah, very interesting. It says, on a night in October 1973, Falkville's young chief of police, Jeff Greenshaw, got a call about a UFO just outside of town. From a frantic caller, said, he thought to himself, he was just, dealing with somebody out of their head, said, but when he got to the scene, said things got weird. So he saw a strange looking figure, and what he thought at first was wrapped in like tinfoil or something. But after turning on his lights, so he found out that weren't the case. Said there weren't any pieces to its outfit or, whatever it was that was made of. So it was just like all one piece. Well, said he also mentioned that it was smooth looking like glass. And it was a little bit over 6 foot tall. He said to an extent, said it reminded him of the robot off of Lost in Space. So he grabbed his Polaroid camera, and before taking some pictures, he said something like, "Howdy, stranger," something along them lines. Said after that, said the creature began to run away. Greenshaw says that the creature said it didn't move like a normal person. Said that it moved more like it had springs in its shoes. He pursued the creature in his squad car at speeds of 35 miles an hour before losing sight of it when he crashed his car. So he thought that it seemed like just fade away into the night.
Dang.
Now that
What
was
did you do
wild.
if you got that call?
Well, at first I might, think the same thing he did at first. That's something you just don't expect to get. The first thing comes to your head is like, but,
It's like, did he crash his police cruiser and
Well, that's one
came
thing
up
I
with the
kept.
story.
Right, that's one
But
thing I kept wondering. Is he crashed it at a whopping 35 mile an hour, but he could have been looking at it, focusing on it.
yeah, I actually saw the pictures he took of it. I'll try to edit those in so everybody can see. They're pretty interesting.
Yeah. But like I said, it's when when it comes to things like that, the wild part about it is, it seems to always catch you off guard, when you're not expecting it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you thinking, somebody's on something,
Yeah.
then when like in his case, when he got out there, it was like, oh my Lord, what's this?
Yeah.
That's definitely one of them things that seemed like it would stick with you all your life.
Oh yeah, with him, I can't remember exactly, but I think I heard that he resigned and may have even moved out of town. He put his reputation at stake on this one.
Lord.
So, I mean, when I hear something like that, I tend to kind of believe it. When somebody's got a lot to lose by coming out and saying something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Especially when somebody stakes a reputation on it and stuff and everything and comes forward with it, that's, it's kind of hard to disprove,
Yeah.
Man.
And it's really cool. He got pictures of it.
Oh, yeah, even better. He says, 9 times out of 10, that's something you rarely get.
Yeah.
Photographic evidence or something like that,
Oh, had you heard of this one?
I have not.
Well, that's cool. I got you
this
there.
I said this one was a new one on me.
Yeah, I think oh, yeah. It was in 73. For some reason, I thought it was in the 80s, but it was 73, it says. Okay, 1973.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, definitely interesting. Kind of almost made me have a Flatwoods Monster type vibe.
Yeah.
It has a UFO involved. And
right.
now, he didn't see a UFO. It was someone called about a UFO.
So it kind of makes you wonder what they saw.
Yeah, it does.
Say UFO.
Yeah, what I read was he got a call from a frantic person called about a UFO, and they kept insisting that he check it out or something like that. Right. That's why he eventually went.
But like I said, it makes you wonder, did they see lights coming from the sky?
Yeah.
Or did they see it and just think, naturally think, some kind of like a alien from another dimension or another world or something, and say, hey, UFO.
Yeah. Or did the UFO get tired of Metal Man as their irritating cousin and just dropped him off in the woods in Alabama?
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah.
You never know.
You never know. Man. Well,
sometimes you can't blame them. We all got them cousins.
Oh, yeah. Especially around here. Well, this next one is about, it's kind of divided. Some believe it's a cryptid. Some believe it's a ghost. It's called Huggin Molly. Huggin Molly is often described as a 7-foot tall creature or being that is said to be as big around as a bale of cotton and dressed in all black robes and roams the streets of Abbeville. I believe that's how you say it. It's said that if she sees you out alone at night, she'll chase you down, grab you tight, hug you, and scream in your ear. Ugh.
That's creepy all on its own.
Oh, yeah. Gosh. One local man claimed that his father said that he had an encounter with the creature, and he believed him. When he was a boy, he was out for a stroll one night and began hearing thumping sounds coming from behind him. The next thing he knew, there were a big set of arms wrapped around him, and he heard a big old scream in his ear that left it ringing for a good while after.
Man, oh man.
Yeah.
Golly, that's whew,
A lot of
that's just
people,
wild.
yeah, a lot of people say it's an old wives' tale type thing to keep kids from sneaking out at night.
Right.
But either way, it's pretty cool legend and story.
That it definitely is. I mean, golly, who would sit and think of something like that? You know,
Yeah,
even
I
if it
know.
is, you know, it's like that's
Now,
pretty creepy.
do you folks think it's a cryptid or a
Yeah.
spirit?
Let us know
in the
what you
comment.
think.
Yeah, yep. Let us know what you think in the comments. And a lot of these stories I found on a website called the Spook Shack. She's got some pretty incredible stuff on there. I tried emailing her, hadn't heard back, but let her know I was going to use these and link to her. There'll be a link in the description. But I found these and reworded them for our
Good
script.
deal.
So our last cryptid is probably the most famous from Alabama,
Yeah.
and that's the white thing.
Yeah. Now I've heard about the white thing, even like
Oh,
I said here in
yeah.
Tennessee. Actually, I've heard about that all my life.
I've been hearing about it too, and it's not Thang, Thing. It's Thang, but
Yeah, like I say it, thing.
yeah, Thang. How do I say thing? Do I say it thing or thing?
Thing.
How do I say it?
I'm not really sure. Never paid attention.
Anyway, if you search about it online, you'll find tons and tons of sightings going back all the way to the 1930s. The creature is said in some cases to look like a Bigfoot in appearance, or possibly Bigfoot's albino cousin. It's said to be 7 to 9 foot tall, covered in thick white fur, and has glowing red eyes. Folks say that it either walks upright or runs on all fours. Now, I will say, I've heard some people say, no, it's not anything like a Bigfoot.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of folks, man, getting some heated debates.
Yeah, I saw that online.
Yeah.
It seems pretty split. About half the people think it's a white colored Bigfoot with red eyes. The other half, what was it? I think I've seen maybe a kind of a like a pale white creature with no fur.
Yeah,
I
and I've heard a lot of folks claim to say it said it was like real tall, but it was real skinny with white fur.
Oh, interesting.
Maybe it's different ones.
Oh, maybe somebody caught it and shaved it.
Maybe.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to get put in the middle of this debate, but I mean, it could be either way. It could be, either one.
You never know.
I've never seen it. I can't say. But another thing that people agree on is there's a strong odor to it. Now, Bigfoot does have a strong odor to it, but people say this thing, the white thing, smells like rotting fish. And then another thing people seem to agree on is that it has a loud scream that it lets out. And they say it sounds like a woman screaming at the top of her lungs. Folks will report that they hear random screams coming from the woods near their homes or towns, and it's often seen as a bad omen. So we got a bunch of stories sent in to us by I mentioned him earlier. His name's Dan Barnwell, who sent us in, I think it was 3 stories.
They're really good too.
They're really good. I think Jared was going to read the first one, but I just wanted to give him a quick shout out. And I think the first one actually goes back to the 1930s, like we talked about.
Yeah, all the way back to the 1930s, and he's titled this one, the Woodcutter's Encounter. It said, now this was told to him by his pastor. who was in his 70s. So he told me, in the story, back in 1986. So he was in his late teens or early 20s when it happened. Said, Brother Barnwell, said, don't you live in Hurricane Mountain? Or on Hurricane Mountain? Said, I had a friend, said, that wouldn't cross that old mountain, day or night. So he lived in Rabbit Town. One winter day, said he hauled a load of firewood down in the square in Jacksonville to sell. Said he was in his old wagon. So he sat there until it was late in the afternoon. So finally he sold his firewood and delivered it. So by then, said it was getting dark. And since they was both cars and horses and stuff on the road, he didn't want to go home over White's Gap to get home. Said he was afraid his horses and wagons would be either, hit by a car or a truck or something. So he decided to take the old thorny road over Hurricane Mountain. Said this would take a few minutes longer, but it was a lot safer. So my friend said that he started over the mountain. So there were, weren't no houses or anything tall. So the road winds back and forth in a constant steady climb. Said, but there's very few steep grades. Well, after a while, said he heard something walking in the woods. Said and it seemed to be following him. So he stopped the wagon and listened. Nothing. He started on his way again. Well, said the horses didn't seem spooked at all. Said, well, maybe it was just an old lost hound dog or something other following him. Said again, he clearly heard something walking, crunching in the dry leaves. Said he was definitely being followed. Well, said he stopped the wagon again, and again, heard nothing. Said the woods was silent, the way they sound when there's a predator moving around. Said at the top of the mountain, the old road crosses Forney Road. Said there's vines. People call the old road the Vineyard Road. Said when the woodcutter come along with his horse and wagon to the Vineyard Road, said he heard something running in the woods. Said it weren't running away, but directly toward him. Said suddenly a white being, shaped exactly like a person, come running out of the woods and jumped up into the wagon. Said it was the whitest of whites. Said old woodcutter thought that, maybe it was an angel or a devil or death or what. Said he fell over the seat and landed in the bed of the wagon, expecting to die, right there. Well, said that old white thing took the man's place on the wagon seat, and the horses continued pulling the wagon as if nothing had happened. Said the old woodcutter laid in the bed out there and watched for the next 10 minutes as that old white thing rode on the seat of the wagon till the Forney Road ended, when it intersected with White's Gap Road on the other side of Hurricane Mountain. Said it was right there. Said that old white thing jumped off that wagon and run back into the woods. Said the man climbed back up on his seat and continued on to his home in Rabbit Town. Said he never again in his whole life crossed Hurricane Mountain. Said because he knew for sure the old white thing was real.
Whoa.
Man.
Yeah. Man, that is wild.
That definitely is.
What gets me is how it knew how to drive the carriage.
Yeah, is it one of them things too where it could be like maybe it was maybe once like solid human, was it, or maybe had it just seen it done before?
Oh, yeah.
By hiding in the woods and watching. Yeah,
so
like I said,
I wonder. Yeah, I wonder if it. Yeah, I also wonder if it was just. I mean, it sounds like it was pretty fast.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it just wanted to ride for.
Yeah. And one thing that got my attention with it that's really, really stuck out to me in the story is the part where it said the horses it didn't bother.
Yeah, that too.
And usually animals like that, they just they freak out.
Horses spook easy.
Yeah.
So easy. You be riding a horse, get thrown off when a jet goes over.
Yeah. I mean, just a loud pop, a twig snap real loud, they'll jump, So I said, but for that to come run out of the wood and jump up there and everything, and they sense stuff like that too,
Uh-huh.
So everything, then that to come, run out of the woods and jump up there, everything.
Something had to be calming about that thing.
Yeah, it could be.
I wonder if it was putting off some pheromones or something, maybe.
Very possible, or it could be, like you said, kind of like talking to them or communicating with them like telepathically or something.
Oh, could have been. Hard to say.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah,
as we always say, the not knowing is what makes it so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, my mind was racing that whole time.
Yeah, mine was too, man.
So the next one Dan sent, he notes was sent. No, someone told him in the 90s.
Yeah.
They worked for the. It's called the Squirrel Hunters Encounter. So this person worked for the Army's Corps of Engineers as a surveyor. My grandpa did, I think, too.
That's neat.
This happened sometime in around 1950. Since he had surveyed these mountains, we had surveyed. My buddy and I knew every ridge from Waterworks Holler to Chimney Peak. We saw some fox squirrels up in there, and when hunting season came in, we decided to go up there and try and shoot a few. We got there before daylight and went up to the ridge and climbed up to the next one over. I got sat down in a comfortable place, watched the darkness turn to dawn. I was listening to the world wake up when I spotted my buddy coming alongside the ridge looking at me. I stood up and waved, and he motioned for me to come meet him. When I got up to him, he was scared to death. I asked, "What's wrong?" He said that he would tell me when we got back to the road, but right now we needed to get out of the woods. We hurried down the road. I could tell something had really spooked him. When we got to the road, I asked him what happened to him. He said, "I saw a solid white man." He said that he saw it wading along through the woods, walking along through the woods. He sat very still until he was sure it couldn't see him or hear him, and then he took off down the ridge. He didn't know what the thing was, and neither did I. Neither one of these men had ever heard of the white thing.
Man. That's wild right there.
Yeah.
Man. Can you imagine?
Yeah, I was picturing it in my head while I was reading.
Yeah. Wow. That's just one of them that it's just mind blowing.
Oh yeah. Out hunting squirrel and see something like that.
Yeah,
I wonder if it was after the squirrels.
Hey, that's very possible. They got to eat something.
Yep. I mean, that's a good source of food.
Yeah, it'd be good protein. A lot of something else too. I've seen a lot of people getting debates over whether they're carnivore or herbivore. Meat eaters, or plant-based eaters. So maybe this one.
We need to find some poo before we can decide that.
Right.
Analyze it.
I got berries. Now we know.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, to be out hunting, you're expecting to get out, go hunting, get you some squirrel, go back, have you some squirrel and dumplings or something, not happening.
Yep.
That day did not go the way they were thinking.
That's a shame, too.
Yeah. Man. Well, are we ready to move on to the next story?
Yeah, I think this is Dan's personal story.
Yeah. All right. It says this story is of the day that I saw the Alabama White Thing. So during the late summer of 1970, my buddy Steve and I were sitting around with nothing to do. Back in, the Jacksonville City dump was still active, and it was less than a mile up the old Forney Road to it. So people would dump unwanted puppies at the dump. And, they grow up wild by foraging through the garbage for scraps and, catching rats and possums, things like that, because it's plentiful up there. Well, these wild dogs was a nuisance because we had hounds for hunting, and things like that, and they'd come in to heat. Well, the wild dogs would come in from the mountains and attack our dogs. So there's always a pack of wild dogs. So we did our best, keep them thinned out. There weren't no other option. So, but on this particular day, we decided to walk up the old iron ore pit with a .22 rifle. There was a freshwater pool at the iron ore pit. It never went dry, even in the hot season. If there was any wild dogs hanging around in the water, so we was going to get them. Now, the iron ore pit was situated between two very steep ridges, not very high, but to drop down to the water hole was almost a cliff. We decided to approach the pit by popping up the top of the ridge and looking down at the pool of the water, to see what was there. And that's what we did. When we come sneaking across the top of the ridge there, I saw something run up the opposite side of the ridge. I said, there goes something. Well, that something only run a short distance, and then it stopped behind a big old longleaf pine tree trunk. We were standing there looking for it, and it stepped from behind the tree. It stood there in plain sight. It was shaped like a person, but it was white as a neon light. The whitest white I have ever seen. Best way I can describe it is to say that it looked like pure energy. It weren't big, only about the size of a regular person. There weren't no hair. I didn't see any claws. It didn't seem to have any facial features, like eyes or nose or a mouth. So we was probably 60 or 70 yards apart, looking directly at it. But it was on the other ridge. Old Steve said, what is that thing? I didn't know what it was, but I wanted to try to figure it out. I was curious. Well, Steve started backing up. I said, don't run. But Steve run. And I decided that I didn't want to figure out what it was by myself. So I run too. Now both of us could, move back then. So now both of us could move back in. And we was a flying down that trail to the road. I don't blame him. I would be too. My old legs would be running in circles like the old road runner. So I was probably about a half mile sprint to the Forney Road. So when we come a jumping off onto the bank on that old dirt road, so we looked back, and that thing weren't no more than 20 yards behind us. Steve raised his rifle up, pulled the trigger without aiming. Bang. He missed it, I guess, anyway. But that thing ain't running back into the woods. And we stood there and caught our breath. Then we started walking down that road home. Steve asked me, he said, what are we going to tell everybody? I said, we ain't going to tell nobody anything. 'cause they'll think we're crazy. So we kept it a secret for a few years. Said, but we'd be drinking with our buddies or something like that. And then we'd tell them about the white thing. And we'd all pile into the truck and ride over Hurricane Mountain, try to see it. But we never did. I still live on Hurricane Mountain. And there's a rock crawler, an off-road club that's there now, where the encounters happened. But I don't know. But man, like I said, that's a wild one right there.
Yeah, I'm wondering if what was it? Oh, an off-road club. Yeah.
Yeah, the off-road club.
So there's people with ATVs and I guess the gators up there four-wheeling a lot. I'm wondering if they ran into it, was what I was thinking there at the end.
Yeah, it's very possible. Either that or maybe if with all the noise or something, they just kept it run off.
That's that too. Man. It's another hunting story too.
Yeah. And maybe it kind of attracts to hunters. Or maybe if it's one of the creatures, maybe if it's like really connected with nature.
Doesn't like the hunting?
Right. Maybe it don't want none of the animals hurt. Even though the people are hunting for food, to feed their families with, the way it sees it is danger.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a protector.
Yeah, protector of the forest.
Yeah, very possible. Let us know what you folks think.
Yeah, and big thank you, Dan, for sending these stories in. It's crazy. I was telling Jared, we were going to record this last week. I didn't have these stories from Dan yet. I think I just got them yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday afternoon.
Something happened the last two times we tried to record this, and then today it worked out, and I had these awesome stories from Dan that I just they're out of the ballpark.
Absolutely, home run with these brothers.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for sending these in.
And I'll probably feature these maybe in individual stories as well.
That'd be neat.
Yeah. So much later they'll be in their own stories. But thank you again, Dan, and big thanks to the Spook Shack. I would not have found out about a lot of these stories without the Spook Shack.
Yeah, big shout out to them.
Yeah. So we're going ahead and doing the next state. It looked like, based on the comments I got, Virginia was what y'all wanted next. If not, whoops. We're doing Virginia anyway. Oh, gosh. I hope I haven't made a big error, but I found some interesting ones. Virginia.
Oh, yeah.
Virginia is really big state. Virginia is... parts of Virginia are extremely different. Where I'm from in Southwest Virginia is kind of more like West Virginia. And then you've got, I don't know a whole bunch about Central Virginia. I haven't spent much time there. I know Northern Virginia is mostly like cities and stuff. I've been up there. No offense to y'all if y'all live up there, but I felt really out of place there.
I've done the same thing. Cities, and if that's what somebody likes, the city life, hey, that's awesome. There's some amazing folks that that's in the cities and stuff.
Yeah.
That I've met. Amazing folks. But just for me personally, I'm a country boy.
I guess I am too. I need to be down here surrounded by trees where people can't see me.
Yeah.
But anyways, yes, it's all very, very different. I don't know if all these cryptid sightings, some of them we don't know where they were, some of them we do. There's also the east coast of Virginia, which is beach, which I think the first one is a beach, or not really a beach, but an ocean cryptid or sea cryptid.
Yeah. Just a just a water cryptid, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Every state seems to have a water cryptid.
Yeah.
And this is Virginia's. It's kind of shared with Maryland. Jared, did you want to get into that one?
Yeah, I'll get rid of it. Sure, no problem.
Yeah, get rid of it.
No problem. Yeah, I'm right on that. All right, now it's the Chesapeake Bay Serpent, Chessie, and this serpent, it's also known as Chessie, and said to be about 30 to 35 feet long, and it's been sighted many times over the years by fishermen, naval officers, and even FBI agents. One of the possible first sightings, we could find took place in 1846 when a ship captain who was sailing between Cape Henry and Cape Charles over the eastern shoreline, when suddenly he saw what he described as a small-headed, serpent-like creature. Much later in the 1980s, there was a ton of sightings. One in particular on a clear night back in May of 1982. A man named Robert Few and his wife had some friends over for a get-together. Robert looked out at the bay to admire the view when he noticed something strange. He saw a large object, about 30 feet long, floating against the tide. It had a long, slender body, humps along its back, and a head resembling a horse or like a snake or something. Well, Robert and his friends watched the creature in awe and even managed to video record it. The story and video blew up all over news and media. There'd been many sightings of the creature before and after this as well. But lately, more recent sightings. This one we found from 2014. Two friends were driving along the Magathi River when suddenly they noticed a 35-foot or so snake-like creature in the river. They said that it had a football-shaped head.
Wow. So had you heard of this one, Jared?
I had not. Now, I'd heard of, naturally I've heard of Nessie, that's, the one everybody's heard of. But this one I hadn't heard of, which, I really thought really interesting.
I actually had heard of it, but it was in passing a couple times. And then when I was looking into the material for what we would share for this story, I found so many sightings. There were just... It was an unbelievable amount of sightings. A lot of them were from the 80s, too. There was a ton. I mentioned a ton of sightings in the 80s. There's a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I just looked them up, and I just kept finding more and more about them. It was nuts.
Yeah, man.
They're seeing something over there. And
yeah, there's definitely something going on somewhere.
Yeah, I did look up recent sightings just so we could have one to talk about. I didn't dig too deep, and I found that one from 2014 right away. I know that's, 10 years ago, but
yeah,
I mean, that's kind of recent. I'm sure I could have found more, too. Yeah. Definitely interesting. I wonder if anybody watching us has seen it. That'd be cool.
No, let us know down in the comment section below, folks, if you've seen it yourself or if you know anybody that has, and let us know about it.
Also, let us know what you think about the cryptid. Definitely an interesting one.
Speaking of those, you got an interesting one up next, too.
Yes. So we've talked about this one on this channel before.
Yep.
We even had a sighting someone sent in of something that kind of sounded like this. And this initial sighting, I think, took place about an hour away from me, which is crazy.
Right.
And this is the Virginia devil monkey. I first heard of the Virginia devil monkey while I was reading a book called Monsters of Virginia, Mysterious Creatures of the Old Dominion by L.B. Taylor Jr. It caught my attention because a lot of the sightings were very close to where I spent the first few years of my life growing up. There were several sightings of these creatures in Southwest Virginia, but one of the more famous ones took place in 1994. A woman from Ohio was driving southwest through Virginia and in the Roanoke area one stormy night on her way to the Outer Banks in North Carolina. She was delayed a bit by having to take a detour through a 2-lane road south of Roanoke, Virginia. She described the area as being very dark and remote. The time was about 2:30 in the morning when suddenly a creature leapt across the road in front of her car, and then the creature calmly walked off like nothing was going on at all, off out into the woods. She described the creature as being like a wolf-like hybrid. It was covered with short, sleek black fur. It stood on 2 hind legs. It was 6 feet tall and had pointy ears, a flat snout, and a long tail. She also noted that it was very muscular and thin. And then shortly after this sighting, there were stories of missing pets in the area and sightings of a creature matching this creature's description. A few weeks after this incident, a couple in nearby Shawsville, Virginia, reported seeing a creature on their property one night and noted that their German Shepherd had gone missing. Well, it's definitely an interesting story. I did look into it, and devil monkeys are actually reported all over the U.S. as well as British Columbia and a few other places. One thing I found when I was looking into it is some people thought it was possibly an escaped zoo creature or maybe some kind of thought to be extinct baboon. But also, we had someone send in a story. This was closer up to Maryland, up in the Northern Virginia area, where she said she was driving to work in like a wooded area, and she saw something matching this description, but except it was kind of transparent. And it was hopping from tree to tree, following her as she drove, and then she acted like she didn't see anything and drove off.
That'd be me. Nope. I didn't see nothing. Nope.
Yeah, just as a bonus story, that was a cool one.
Yeah, it definitely was. Really neat too. I mean, the ones about the devil monkey, it's just they're just really interesting. And what I think is really wild is, there's always an animal goes missing, it seems like.
Yeah, it often sounds like it's a German Shepherd too.
Yeah. And maybe it's something about the breed of the dog, or who knows, maybe it's just collecting doggies.
Yeah, I think there was a German Shepherd involved in one of the early Mothman sightings too.
Yeah. One of these days, when somebody actually captures a cryptid and finds its nest, you're just going to find like 5,000 German Shepherds there, just happy and healthy as can be.
Yep.
Oh, man.
Well, yeah, let us know what you think of this cryptid in the comments, and if you've seen one yourself.
Definitely.
We'd be more than glad to cover the story here.
Absolutely. And speaking of some really cool ones, got another one for you guys. The Wood Booger. Now, Wood Booger is really just another name for Bigfoot used in, Southwest Virginia area, notably in Norton City and Wise County. According to a newspaper from the Old Post on November 24th, 1892, the creature was given the name Wood Booger after the Booger Man because it was rumored to carry off children who wandered off into the woods at night. Now, if you go to Norton, Virginia, these days, you'll see many attractions featuring the Wood Booger Monster, including a restaurant called the Wood Booger Grill, a statue located at Flag Rock Recreation Area And you can also go on the Wood Booger Guided Research Hike. And there's even a Wood Booger Festival. And what started the creature's popularity, the show Finding Bigfoot did an episode in the area due to a large number of sightings in the, High Knob area. The creature was always described as a bulky humanoid creature about 7 to 8 feet tall with brown or black fur.
Now, I will say that you and I have been sent a lot of booger. It's
Yep.
just, I think it was called Booger in Appalachia or a
Yeah, the
Yahoo.
cold booger.
Because
yeah.
We've had so many booger sighting stories. Gosh, like I had one from like the 1930s before. I think this was close. I mean, it was around that same area. There was a lady, I think, picking apples or something like that, and one came up to her and chased her home.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
was
I got one
the
similar to
lady
that, too.
didn't. Yeah, it wasn't the same lady who saw it in the 1930s. I think it was her nephew, and all kinds of them around that area. And then a little bit north of me, they call them Yahoos a lot because they yell out Yahoo. Apparently,
Now, could it be that, or could it be just a little bit of somebody back there in the mountains, some good old boys with some moonshine?
yeah, that's actually one thought I had. There's a lot of old Appalachian tales that people. What is it like? If you see something, no, you didn't.
Right. If you hear something, no, you didn't.
Yeah.
If you hear a whistle, don't whistle back.
Yeah, I've heard that goes back to the moonshining days, actually.
Yeah,
Where
I've heard that
if
too.
you saw a still up in the woods, no, you didn't see anything.
Right.
Or if you hear
Exactly.
whistling, like if they're communicating with each other, trying to find each other at the stills. That's what
Right.
I've heard anyway. A lot of people associate it with paranormal. I don't know. That's what I've heard. That's just what I've heard. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah.
Could be anything.
Yeah, it really could be.
Yeah.
Because there is one thing that Jimmy and I both can vouch for. There are things in these old Appalachian mountains that nobody can explain.
Yep. And we've seen some of these things.
Yeah. We've had our own experiences and stuff. We've known people that has, and it's just, yeah. So, so we're not discrediting anybody. So.
No. I'm definitely just saying what I heard those things are.
Right. We just try to look at everything from every possible, possible source,
Oh, and I may have had a booger encounter I could talk about real quick too, since we didn't have a whole lot of encounter stories on it. I mean, it's just more of a, hey, this is what it is. Oh,
right.
and also I'll talk about my trip out to Norton as well. When I was a kid out in the mountains, we lived out in the woods. Now this could have been a bear, but I saw something laying on the ground, big and very furry, brown, kind of a light brown colored, just laying in the woods. I didn't see, I just saw fur and something laying in the woods, big. It wasn't a deer, a different color than this was,
Right.
Whole different color. And it was
Well,
big.
when you grow up, in the woods and mountains stuff like we do, you know the difference between what's, a deer and what's a critter and what ain't.
Yeah, I know the difference between a deer and something I can't explain. We have black bears here, and I know what a black bear looks like. So, it wasn't a black bear. I know they can come in a kind of brownish color, but this was very light brown.
Wow.
It was pretty weird. I'm not saying it definitely wasn't a black bear. It could have been a black bear laying in the woods. Black bear or not, I'm glad I got out of there before it noticed me. I will say that.
Right? Yeah,
And
that's
then
always a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, I was a kid, so it's hard to tell.
Right.
And we did have black bears come up to our backyard, living there quite a bit. I mean, I've had black bears here too. So, I mean, they're all over the place.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I don't know what kind of bears you've got there, but I mean, I assume you've got black bears. And
Yep. Black bears.
do you have any other kind?
Just the black ones, like I said, that I've seen.
Yeah, I've
Like I
only
said,
heard of
now, like I
black
said,
bears here.
yeah. And like I say, especially like when we before we moved down here to McMinnville and everything, where we used to live down up there on the down the holler, in the old cabin. There used to be an old black bear and everything, and he would come down to the stream. He'd give him something to drink. Sometimes you'd see him out there catch him a fish or something,
Hmm.
everything. And man, he was big. They always say, they don't get quite as big as the grizzlies. And the one we saw, I said they used to come down there a lot. We nicknamed him Barry. Uh, so I said, oh Barry, whenever he'd come down there and everything, I said the size that he was at that distance. I mean, sometimes he'd even go through the edge of the yard, and it drove the dogs nuts, but they weren't
Oh,
even
I
brave enough
bet.
to go attack him. But like I said, the sheer size of him alone and everything, he's like, man, I don't want to mess with him.
No, I would never fool the bear.
No.
Oh, and I also wanted to say, as some of y'all know, I've been down to Norton, Virginia, and checked out some of those Wood Booger attractions. I had the Wood Booger burger, and I went
Yep,
up and
yep.
I patted that old statue right on its
Right
hairy
on the
hiney.
tipples. He said it
Yeah.
was a little matted, but it was all right. Good shape.
So yeah, if you want to check out that video, it's a popular one. It
Yeah, it's
got
a really good
popular.
one.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite ones. I mean, I say that all the time. I love all of them, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, check it out. Definitely a cool part of this area's culture. The boogers or wood booger,
Yeah,
depending
yeah.
on what you call them. I've always heard about them called boogers
Yeah, that's
myself.
what we've always heard, growing up, just an
Yeah,
old booger.
and what's crazy is I heard about these attractions. I was at a flea market in it was a West Virginia flea market. I live on the border pretty much. When I went to a flea market in West Virginia, and the guy was wearing a Wood Booger festival shirt, and it said Norton, Virginia. I was like, oh, that's cool, and I looked it up, and I found all
Right.
this. Isn't that neat?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, sometimes, it'll surprise you, what all kind of, it's really neat stuff, you have so
I'd never
close
heard
to
about it.
you and never even
Yeah,
know about it,
yeah.
I find
That's
stuff like that
one.
all the time here in Tennessee.
Yeah, that's one thing I like about doing these legend tripping videos that I do. People write me all the time. They're like, "Wow, this was 20 minutes away from me, and I didn't even know about
Yeah,
it."
you never even know it.
Yeah,
Dang,
exactly.
where have I been?
Yeah,
I was born
exactly.
and raised here,
I love doing it. Love doing it. Now I think you guys love watching it,
Absolutely.
except for Jared.
Yeah,
Those
except for
videos make
me.
him mad.
Yeah. It always makes me mad because he don't take me with him.
Well, let's get on to the next cryptid. This
Yes.
one I have heard of, but I didn't realize that it was a Virginia and Tennessee cryptid. I was actually surprised to hear this.
Yeah, it is pretty popular among the cryptid community,
I hadn't
and
heard about this one a ton, but I mean,
that's what
I
I
had
started
heard
saying.
of it.
I've heard of it here and there. I mean, but as far as like, hearing stories about it and things like that, even growing up, I'd never heard any stories about it. I just heard about it, just here and there on TV,
Mhm.
books, things like that.
Well, this cryptid is called the Wampus Cat. And it's said to walk upright like a human, but has the body of a large cat, dark skinned, and some features of a woman, along with large, glowing, hypnotic eyes. And it's said to have or give off a terrible, foul odor and has a terrifying howl. Reports of this creature are said to go all the way back to when Appalachia was first being settled, and even further back if you ask the natives in the area. Most folks say that the origin of the creature was from one or two different stories. The first one being that it was believed to be a native woman who thought that her husband was being unfaithful. He would go out on very long hunting trips with other members of the tribe, and he would always stay gone a little bit longer than expected. So one day, she decided she was going to see what was going on for herself. The problem was that women weren't allowed to go on these hunting trips. So she put on a mountain lion hide and followed the group. Well, unfortunately, she was caught. And as punishment, the tribe's medicine man bound the hide to her for life, thus creating the Wampus Cat. The other main story is that the creature was a witch who would transform into this cat-like creature and hypnotize farmers and steal their farm animals. And this was going pretty good for her for several years until one night she was caught. And she got stuck in the form. And after that, she was unable to turn back. So she was doomed to roam the earth in this form. So the creature, like we mentioned, has been spotted several times. A lot of these times, she's said to be trying to steal farm animals and has often been blamed for cattle mutilations. Did you know that the creature is still being reported in modern times as well? Well, yeah. A few years ago in Abington, Virginia, a man claimed to have seen what he thought was the Wampus Cat. He and his wife said that they saw a large pair of glowing hypnotic eyes one night behind some stairs, looking, between the stairs. And when they called out to whatever it was, it hissed at them like a cat and ran off. And then they noticed a huge cat-like creature running away on its hind legs.
Man, oh man.
There's a lot to talk about with this one. All right, so first, the last one. I didn't see a lot else about it. They said it was behind some stairs and ran off. Now, was this outside somewhere? Or was it in a basement? I don't know. I would have assumed since it ran off, it was outside somewhere.
Outside somewhere, surely.
But those outside steps that are like that are usually like stone or concrete steps. I guess if it was like out on a deck or something, maybe. I don't know.
Right. But then again, if it was to be some of the ones that's just shows up in random places people say to stay away from, maybe it's something mystical about it that draws the creature to it.
Oh, yeah. Now, had you heard these two main stories? I actually had heard those two stories. That I had heard that it was the Native American woman.
I started to say I had heard the one about the Native American woman. That one I had heard because I had always thought it was real similar to what was it, Spearfinger.
Oh yeah, it is.
Very similar. The way she gets captured and everything was evil.
Yeah.
But like I said, she was captured and punished and, transformed and stuff,
Yep.
So.
Yep. No, that was the one I had heard, and I hadn't heard the witch one. Had you?
No, that one I had not.
So I'm wondering if it's kind of a regional thing. Maybe where our area, it's she was a native woman, and then maybe who knows, up north or further south or something, it was a witch.
Yeah,
I
who
guess
knows?
that would make sense further south, maybe.
Right. Which, throughout the mountains and different parts of the world and stuff, everything, every different areas, they have their own versions of these stories and legends and things like that, so kind of like
Now,
the old
also,
wives' tales, you'll hear
yeah,
it one
yeah.
way in one part and then a different way, in a different part of the mountains. Yeah.
So yeah, definitely, it's different. It's going to be different where you're from, probably, or different variations. That's what makes all these tales so interesting.
Yeah, that's what I
So
start to say. That's one thing, but that's what makes them so neat. It's just they have their own originality to them and stuff and everything. But the basic premise of it's always the same.
yeah. Now I will say sometimes people get upset saying, "Well, that's not how I heard it." I mean, it's exactly like what we just said. Depending on where you're from, it might be totally different.
Oh yeah, that's like a lot of people has asked me. Excuse me. Say what's the correct term or pronunciation of Appalachia? Is it
Oh
Appalachia,
gosh, I get it all the
Appalachia,
time.
or Appalachia? And I'm like, well, technically they're all right. And they're like, what? Like, well, it just depends on what part of the mountains you're from. I said, like, say for example, the name Martha. Our elders, whenever a word ended with a, they would replace that with ie. They wouldn't say Martha, they'd say Marthy, or Sparta would be Sparty, So, like Appalachia, and some of them would pronounce it Appalachia, so things like that. So, it really just depended on what area of the mountains, of Appalachia you're in, where you're from. Like I said, a lot of it too would depend on like the generation
Hmm.
you'd hear it from. So technically they're all right.
Yeah, I think we say Appalachia the same way, don't
Yeah, I
we?
say Appalachia. That's how I've always
Now,
heard it.
yeah, there's. I'm trying to think of how people outside of Appalachia call it. It sounds weird, and I can't think of it right now.
I've heard it pronounced Appalachia and
Appalachia,
yeah,
yeah,
Appalachia and things,
yeah, Appalachia. It feels weird saying it that way.
Appalachia and
Yeah, they call me Spooky Appalachia, and I'm like, what is that?
no.
What is Appalachia? Now
Oh
I'm going to
man.
start saying it weird. Appalachia? Nah, never mind. I said it right. Oh
Oh
wait, there's
man.
no right. Um, so there's one more we were going to cover.
Oh yeah, it's a really interesting one too
It
about
is.
the little red devil. Now the little red devil, the creature known as that is really interesting one. Seen in central and eastern Virginia, said to be 2 to 3 feet tall, covered in red or pink fur, appeared to be like childlike in appearance, with hooves as feet. Now, this is why it was given the name Little Red Devil. The first sighting we were able to find was in 1968 and happened in Crewe, Virginia. Two brothers were out in the front porch of their farm one evening. When one, the oldest, looked up and saw what he described as a childlike creature wandering around. About 3 feet tall, red, had hooves for feet. The young man was frozen in fear after seeing it, and after a bit, he was able to shake off the fear, grab his brother, and run to the house. In 1992, two young men were walking the trail around 4 in the afternoon one day in May. They suddenly come upon a small creature they described as being 2 to 3 feet tall, covered in red fur. Frightened, they turned and ran back to the trail entrance while the creature chased them. It eventually let out a high-pitched laugh and disappeared into the woods. In July of 1997, a group of friends were hanging out when a man sitting in the back of a truck noticed a figure about 3 feet tall, red colored, and had claws for hands. It noticed him and galloped away.
Wow, that's a weird one.
Dang. That is,
Now I had never ever heard of that one. Let me see.
I
Let
hadn't
me
either. That
see.
was a new one on me.
A lot of these I had heard of, but not this one.
No, like
This one's a new one.
Yeah, that was completely brand new to me. But it's like, man, so interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, could it been like a fairy or something, maybe, or
Yeah, I mean,
a
it
garden
makes you wonder.
gnome or a gnome or
Yeah, who knows? Maybe some
or
kind of demon or something. I mean,
yeah, who knows? That's
kind of makes you wonder
that's
too.
weird.
For a lot of times, especially like folks in that area, sometimes you see like hoof prints through your yard, and they're like, it's a maybe a deer, a cow, or something like that got loose or something. Maybe something like that. You never know.
I don't know. I feel like if that thing came after me and it's only 2 foot tall, I'd probably try stepping on
Kick
it.
Kick it like a football.
My dog would tear that thing up.
Get it, boy.
Oh, gosh. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed this big collection of classic cryptid stories. If you did, be sure and like, subscribe, comment, and all that jazz. Share it out to all your friends. And I'll catch you in the next one.